Kepler station said humans were genetic mistakes. Said one gravity species couldn't survive real work. Commander Vrask was wrong. In 7 days, mechanic Carter Thane, 22 years old, 79 kilograms, from a planet that crushes most species in hours, did what 40 Alliance engineers couldn't. In 6 months, fixed a 50-year-old reactor core, then ran into a radiation zone with 12% atmosphere to save 11 lives. This is how one human from a death world changed what an entire galaxy believed about the word impossible. The crawl space wasn't built for humans. 200 degrees Celsius, 90 centimeters wide. Pipes hissing coolant through fractured seals, spraying scalding mist into air already thick enough to choke on. Carter Thane wedged himself deeper into the metal throat, ignoring the way his shoulders scraped against superheated alloy, ignoring the way his lungs screamed for oxygen that wasn't there, ignoring the voices in his headset, 3 different species all telling him the same thing in increasingly frantic tones. Get out. You'll die in there. It's impossible. He'd heard that word before. His left hand found the ruptured coolant line. The metal burned through his glove. He felt skin blister, smelled his own flesh cooking, and kept his grip steady. With his right hand, he fed sealant paste into the wound, working by touch because the steam had turned his faceplate opaque. The pipe bucked. Pressure surged. For 3 seconds, Carter held 600 pounds of force with nothing but determination and a body that had spent 22 years fighting gravity most species couldn't survive for an hour. The seal caught. The hissing stopped. Silence dropped like a curtain. Then the voices exploded in his headset, shock, disbelief, something that might have been awe. Carter Thane dragged himself backward through the crawl space, hands shaking, vision blurred. When he finally tumbled out onto the maintenance deck, 4 aliens stared at him like he'd crawled out of their nightmares. He pulled off his helmet, smiled through cracked lips. Pipes fixed, then collapsed. The shuttle descent made Carter's stomach drop in that familiar way that meant real gravity ahead. Through the viewport, Kepler station hung against the black, a wheel of light and metal spinning slow enough to feel elegant, fast enough to generate 0.35 standard gravities. 0.35. He'd spent the last 3 weeks in zero-G transit, muscles atrophying despite the resistance training. Now his body felt heavy, foreign. By the time the shuttle docked and the airlock cycled, his legs remembered how to work. Barely. The arrivals terminal bustled with species Carter had only seen in vids. A Velcrin scuttled past on 6 clicking legs, eye stalks rotating to track movement. 2 Quilix hung from ceiling fixtures, their elongated bodies swaying as they conversed in whistles. A Brenthi lumbered through the crowd, massive and confident aliens parting around it like water around stone. No one looked at Carter twice. He found the Workforce Integration Office tucked between a Yilith prayer alcove and something that looked like an aquarium, but probably wasn't. The door sensor hesitated before opening, like it wasn't sure he was real. Inside, the air smelled sterile, clinical. A Velcrin sat behind the desk, mandibles working over a data pad, its eye stalks swiveled up, paused. Species human. Carter kept his voice level, professional. Carter Thane, I have an appointment. The Velcrin stalks went rigid. It tapped the data pad with a manipulator limb, movements precise, almost delicate. Carter watched those limbs, so thin, so fragile looking, and remembered to keep his own hands relaxed. Gentle. Don't squeeze. Don't grip. Don't forget you can break things here. Thane, yes. The translator embedded in the desk rendered the Velcrin's clicks into flat, emotionless English. Background check complete. Medical clearance pending review. I was told medical cleared 3 weeks ago. Protocols were updated. The eye stalks angled away, a gesture Carter had learned meant dismissal. Please wait. The waiting area held 1 bench. Carter sat. The bench creaked under his weight, designed for species averaging 40 kilograms, not the 79 he'd been on Earth. He shifted, trying to distribute the load, and the creaking got worse. A Yilith entered, all crystalline skin and bioluminescent patterns flickering nervousness. She glanced at Carter, then at the empty space beside him, chose to stand. 15 minutes became 30, 30 became 50. Carter studied the wall display, a rotating feed of station news. A safety announcement about pressure seal maintenance, an advertisement for zero-G sports equipment, a reminder that Sector 7 was undergoing scheduled repairs. Then the feed cut to something else. A lecture hall, students clustered in hover seats, bodies arranged in ways Earth biology wouldn't allow. At the front, another Velcrin gestured at holographic data with 4 of its 6 limbs. Gravitational tolerance across sentient species, the Velcrin was saying. Dr. Torin, according to the caption, distinguished xenobiology professor. The data is conclusive. One standard gravity represents an absolute biological threshold. Carter's jaw tightened. No known sentient species has evolved on or can survive extended exposure to a 1G environment. The energy expenditure alone would be catastrophic. Bones would need to be impossibly dense. Cardiovascular systems would require constant high-pressure operation. Musculature would atrophy under the constant strain. A student raised a tentacle. What about the Kravox expedition? Excellent reference. Dr. Torrens Stalks bobbed approvingly. Cycle year 2012. A research team attempted to establish a base on a 1.1 gravity world. Despite exoskeletons, enhancement drugs, and cutting-edge technology, they lasted 6 days. 3 died. The survivors required months of rehabilitation. The professor's image leaned forward, voice dropping to that particular tone academics used when delivering an absolute truth. One standard gravity is the line. Cross it, and you are playing with death. No species survives prolonged exposure to 1G. None. It is simply not biologically possible. The feed cycled back to station news. Carter sat very still, feeling the weight of his own skeleton pressing down through muscle and tendon into a bench that wasn't built for bodies like his. Feeling every breath expand ribs that had spent 2 decades fighting Earth's pull. Not biologically possible. Thane Vasainen. He looked up. The Velcrin clerk gestured him forward with 2 limbs, while the other 4 worked the data pad. Medical review complete. You are cleared for non-technical positions only. Carter blinked. I'm a licensed mechanic. 2nd class. The posting said, the posting was for species with appropriate structural integrity for high-stress mechanical work. The translator rendered it polite. The clerk's body language, Stalk's angled down mandibles tight, rendered it something else. 1 gravity physiology presents unacceptable risk factors. Bone density scans indicate premature degradation. Cardiovascular stress markers are beyond acceptable parameters. You are cleared for custodial services, food preparation, or administrative support. My bones are fine. That's what they look like on a human. Nevertheless, station regulations prioritize worker safety. The clerk slid a data chip across the desk. Custodial services has openings. Shift begins at 0600. Orientation is mandatory. Carter picked up the chip, felt its weight, maybe 2 grams, reminded himself not to crush it. Is there an appeals process? You may file a formal grievance. Processing time is 6 to 8 weeks. Will there be anything else? The Yillith, who'd been standing in the waiting area, swept past. Carter approached the desk with a smile. Her bioluminescent patterns shifted to warm gold. I'm here about the engineering position. Carter left. The mop handle fit his hands wrong. Too thin, too light. Carter had to consciously remember not to grip hard enough to splinter the composite material. He worked the corridors of the education wing at 0400 when the traffic was minimal, and he could move without constantly watching his step, without constantly reminding himself, gentle, careful, don't bump into anyone, don't break anything. You're in a world made of glass. The floor gleamed under his methodical strokes. Back home, janitorial work had been honest. Here it felt like punishment. He passed a lecture hall. Light spilled through the door's window. Carter's mop slowed. Inside, Doctor. Torn stood at the front of a half-full classroom. Eye stalks animated all 6 limbs, gesturing at holographic models of planetary systems. Students clustered in their hover seats, Velcrins, Yilliths, Aquilics hanging from the ceiling, fixture 2 Brenthes taking up the back row. Environmental pressures shape evolutionary outcomes, Dr. Torn was saying. Consider the Yillith homeworld, 0.2 standard gravities. The species developed crystalline, cellular structures that would shatter under higher loads, but in their native environment, optimized for efficiency. Carter leaned the mop against the wall, stood by the window. The Velcrin homeworld operates at 0.4 standard gravities. Our skeletal structure, chitinous exoskeleton with specialized joint mechanisms, allows for complex manipulation while minimizing energy expenditure. A Velcrin student in the 3rd row shifted. Carter couldn't read the body language, but the professor responded anyway. Yes, Kyle. Excellent question. Dr. Torren pulled up a new hologram, a spectrum of planetary masses and corresponding gravity wells. The galaxy hosts thousands of sentient species. Gravitational tolerances range from 0.15 to 0.85 standard gravities. But notice the gap. The hologram highlighted empty space above the 0.85 mark. No species exists in this range. The evolutionary pressures become insurmountable. A 1-gravity world doesn't create life, it crushes it. Inside the classroom, Kale, the Velcrin student, shifted again. Its eye stalks rotated, tracking movement outside. Carter realized the student was looking at him. Their eyes met through the window. Carter holding a mop. Kale surrounded by cutting-edge xenobiology equipment and peers who belonged there. Carter picked up his mop and moved on. The station intercom crackled at 1400 hours, interrupting the ambient hum of life support and the distant thrum of the rotation drives. Attention all personnel. The voice carried authority the translator couldn't quite strip away. Commander Vrask Brenthai, Station Security Chief. Recent workforce integration has brought to my attention certain liabilities. Carter was in Maintenance Bay 7 mopping coolant residue from a deck plate. He froze. Specifically, the inclusion of one gravity species in operational roles. I want to be clear. A pause. Deliberate. One gravity physiology represents a genetic mistake, an evolutionary dead end. These beings are structurally compromised, prone to failure under the standard working conditions. The bay went silent. 3 Velcrin technicians stopped their work. A Yylith supervisor turned toward the nearest speaker, patterns flashing confusion. Do not trust them with technical work. Do not rely on them in emergency situations. They are, by definition, unsuited for life beyond their gravity well. Station policy will reflect this reality. That is all. The intercom cut. Carter stood in the spreading silence, mop in hand, and felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger, not yet. Just the familiar weight of being measured and found wanting by people who'd never had to fight for every step. That's not right. He turned. A Yylith stood in the bay entrance, young maybe, though Carter couldn't read their ages. Her designation badge read Zira, Environmental Systems Engineer. Her bioluminescent patterns flickered red and orange. Anger, he'd learned. Frustration. You're the human, she said, not a question. Carter Thane. Izira. She crossed the deck in 3 fluid strides. 0.35 G made everyone graceful. What Vrask said, it's not policy, it's prejudice. Feels like policy when it keeps me mopping floors. You're a mechanic. Zira's patterns shifted to blue-green. Curiosity. I saw your file. Second-class certification. Propulsion systems specialist. Yeah, well, apparently my bones are too fragile for real work. She cut herself off. Looked toward the intercom speaker. I'm going to file a complaint. Formal grievance. This is discrimination based on species origin, which violates about 12 different Alliance protocols. Don't. Why not? Carter set the mop down carefully. Looked at this Yylith who barely knew him, who was willing to fight a fight that wasn't hers. Because you'll just make it harder on yourself, and nothing will change. You're giving up. I'm being realistic. He picked up the mop bucket. Thanks, though. Zira watched him go, patterns cycling through colors he didn't have names for. The station gym operated 24 hours, catering to species with different circadian rhythms. At 0300, it was empty. Carter stood in the doorway, watching his breath fog in the climate-controlled air. The equipment looked wrong. Resistance machines calibrated for 0.35 G weights, marked in measurements that assumed different muscle density, different leverage. He'd been careful, kept his head down, did his work, didn't make waves. But Dr. Torin's lecture kept playing in his head. Not biologically possible. Vrask's announcement. Genetic mistake. Carter stepped inside. The weight rack held plates from 5 kilograms up to 50. He loaded a bar with 2 25s. 50 kilograms total. On Earth, he could bench 160. Here in 0.35 G, that 50 would feel like 17.5. Nothing. He lifted it. The bar felt like cardboard. Carter added weight. 75 kilograms, 100, 120. The bar started to feel real. He positioned himself on the bench press, planted his feet, and lifted. The weight rose smooth, too smooth. He pressed it 15 times before his muscles even registered effort. You're going to hurt yourself. Carter nearly dropped the bar. He racked it fast, sat up. A Quillix hung from the ceiling, fixture elongated body swaying slightly. Pattern recognition said this was Pax. He'd seen them around the custodial department. They handled the vertical surfaces, places other species couldn't reach. How long have you been watching? Long enough to see you lift more than any Brenthi on station. Pax's voice whistled through the translator, amused. Also long enough to realize you're not sweating. How much weight would it take to make you sweat? Carter looked at the bar, did the math. On Earth, 160 kilograms. Here that'd be, what, 457 in 0.35 G. He shook his head. I don't think the equipment goes that high. Packs dropped from the ceiling, caught themselves on a support beam, reoriented with the casual grace of species that thought in 3 dimensions. You're from a one-gravity world. Yeah. Dr. Torrens says that's impossible. Doctor. Torrens never been to Earth. A pause, then, I want to see something. Can you jump? Carter stood, looked around the gym. The ceiling was 4 meters up. In Earth gravity, he could maybe touch 2.5 meters at his best vertical. Here, he bent his knees. Pushed. The floor dropped away. The ceiling rushed at him. Carter's hands slapped the fixture. Pax had been hanging from 4 meters straight up, and he was still rising. He twisted, managed to get his feet under him for the landing, absorbed the impact through knees that knew how to handle gravity. Pax stared. Their whole body went rigid in what might have been shock. Do that again. Why? Because I want to record it. Because nobody's going to believe me if I don't have proof. Because, Pax's translator stuttered, searching for the right words. Because Dr. Torren needs to see this. No, Carter's voice came out harder than he meant. No recordings. I'm not a circus act. You could change everything. Prove them wrong about humans. I could get kicked off this station. Earth could get blacklisted from the Alliance. Carter moved toward the door. Just forget you saw this. Please. Pax watched him leave, then very carefully pulled out a personal data pad and started recording anyway. Carter was cleaning the observation deck when KL found him. The Velcrin student approached with that particular hesitation that meant they were stepping outside their comfort zone. Eye stalks swiveled, tracking Carter's movements as he wiped down the viewport. You're the human, Kale said. Carter didn't look up. Words getting around. I saw you, outside Dr. Torren's lecture. A pause. You were listening. Hard not to when people are talking about how your species shouldn't exist. Kale's mandibles worked a gesture Carter had learned meant discomfort. Dr. Torren is brilliant, but sometimes brilliance makes you confident in things you shouldn't be confident about. He seemed pretty confident to me, because he's never been wrong before. Kale moved closer, close enough that Carter could see the fine patterns etched into the Velcrin's exoskeleton. Tell me about Earth. What's it like living in one gravity? Carter set down his cleaning supplies, looked out at the stars beyond the viewport. It's like, imagine if every step you took required effort. Not exhausting effort, but constant effort. You're always pushing against something that wants to pull you down. Your heart has to pump harder to move blood upward. Your bones have to be strong enough to support your own weight without buckling. Your muscles have to work just to keep you standing. That sounds terrible. You get used to it. You don't think about it. It's just normal. He picked up the cleaning cloth again. But it makes you strong. Not superhero strong, just ready for effort. Is that why you can jump 4 meters? Carter's hand froze. How did you? Pax showed me, and about 40 other students, and Dr. Torren, and possibly Station Command. Kale's eye stalks angled down. The recording went viral 3 hours ago. I thought you should know. The observation deck suddenly felt too small. Carter's pulse hammered in his ears, 1G cardiovascular system optimized for high pressure, flooding his body with adrenaline it didn't need. Where's Pax now? Probably hiding. Commander Vrask issued a station-wide memo 20 minutes ago. You're being summoned to administration. Carter closed his eyes, breathed. Of course I am. For what it's worth, Kale said quietly, half the station thinks you're incredible. The other half thinks you're dangerous. I'm not sure which is worse for you. Thanks. That's very comforting. I could walk with you to administration, if you want. Carter looked at this Velcrin student who had no reason to involve themselves, who was offering solidarity anyway. You don't have to do that. I know. KL's stalks rotated, focusing on him fully. But I've spent 20 years learning about biology. And in one recording you made me realize I don't know anything at all. So yes, I want to walk with you. They left together. Administration occupied the station's hub, where rotation-generated gravity gave way to actual zero-G. Carter pulled himself through corridors he'd only seen from the outside, KL navigating beside him with the easy confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. The director's office was a sphere. Commander Vrask floated in the center, massive, Brenthy body anchored by magnetic boots. Dr. Torren hovered near a viewport, eye stalks working independently. One tracking Carter, one tracking Kato, the others focused on data pads. A third figure surprised Carter. Zira, the Yylith engineer who'd defended him. Her patterns flickered muted gray. Carter Thane. Vrask's voice didn't need the translator to sound dangerous. Do you understand the severity of your deception? I didn't deceive anyone. You concealed your physical capabilities. You allowed the station to believe you were, what weak fragile, a genetic mistake. Carter kept his voice level. Those were your assumptions, Commander, not my lies. Dr. Torrance Stalk snapped to attention. The recording shows you performing feats that should be physiologically impossible. Jumping 4 meters in 0.35 gravity. Lifting masses that would stress a Brenthy's musculature. I'm not particularly strong for a human. I played basketball in high school. That's a sport where you jump a lot. My vertical was decent but not exceptional. And yeah, I can lift weights, but so can anyone who works with their hands. Your decent vertical, Dr. Torrance said, exceeds the maximum jumping capacity of every species in this station by a factor of 3. Vrask's magnetic boots clanked as he shifted position. This presents a security concern. A species with your physical advantages concealed as harmless. I am harmless. Carter looked the commander in the eye. I've been mopping floors for 4 days. Haven't hurt anyone. Haven't broken anything. Haven't done anything except try to do the job I was hired for. The job you were unqualified for. Because you decided I was unqualified. Before meeting me, before testing me, just because I'm from a one-gravity world. Carter felt his pulse climbing, forced it down. That's not safety protocol. That's prejudice. Silence dropped like a hammer. Zira's patterns flashed bright blue. Dr. Torrance stalks went rigid. Even Kale, floating quietly near the door, seemed to contract. Vrask stared. You dare. This is a formal grievance. Zira's voice cut through clear and cold. Filed 17 hours ago. Discrimination based on species origin. Alliance Protocol 77 Delta. The commander's attention snapped to her. You were told to stand down. And I refused. It's in the complaint documentation. Along with evidence that you've systematically denied qualified candidates access to positions they're certified for based solely on gravitational origin classification. She has documentation, Carol added. Quiet, factual. I helped compile it. 47 cases in the last 3 cycles. All species from above 0.6G homeworlds, all rejected for technical positions despite meeting or exceeding qualifications. Dr. Torrance made a sound like escaping steam. This is not the appropriate forum. No, but it's the one we've got. Zira turned to Carter. I told you I'd file a grievance. You told me not to. I didn't listen. Carter felt something crack in his chest, not breaking. Opening. The human remains a security concern, Vrask said, but the edge had left his voice. Regardless of policy compliance. Then test me. The words came out before Carter could stop them. You want to know what I can do? What humans can do? Give me a real test. Engineering, mechanics, whatever. If I fail, I leave. If I pass. If you pass what we grant you access to critical systems, allow you into positions where your genetic advantages could be exploited. If I pass, you stop treating my entire species like we're defective. Vrask's expression, hard to read on a Brenthy face, might have been respect, might have been calculation. One test, he said, 48 hours. You will attempt to repair the Sector 7 reactor cooling system, an issue that has defeated 40 engineers over the last 6 months. Carter's stomach dropped. In 48 hours. While performing equivalent physical exertion. If your species is truly adapted for one-gravity environments, this should be trivial. We'll simulate 1.2 standard gravities in a test chamber. You'll have access to standard tools and schematics. The clock begins tomorrow at 0600. And if I refuse, then you confirm what I already know, that humans are unfit for life beyond their gravity well, and I will recommend Earth be barred from all Alliance stations pending full xenobiological review. Dr. Torrance stalks rotated toward Vrask. Commander, that's excessive. That's necessary. The Brenthy's gaze held Carter's. Well, do you accept? Kale floated closer. Eye stalks angled in what might have been concern. Zira's patterns flashed warning red. Carter thought about his father on the oil rig, teaching him to splice high-pressure lines in summer heat. Thought about every teacher who'd said he wasn't smart enough, every coach who'd said he wasn't fast enough, every person who'd looked at him and seen limitations instead of potential. Thought about 8 billion humans back on Earth, waiting to see if the galaxy would accept them or lock them out forever. Yeah, he said, I accept. Vrask nodded. Dismissed, all of you. They left together. Carter, Kale, Zira floated through corridors in silence until they reached a spoke elevator that would take them back to the rotating sections back to gravity. You just committed to the impossible, Zira said quietly. Story of my life. KL's stalk swiveled. The cooling system is a nightmare. 40 certified engineers, 6 months, zero progress. The reactor core is ancient. The schematics are incomplete. The access passages are barely navigable even in 0.35 G. I know. In 1.2 gravity, you'll be carrying 3 times your effective weight, constant, for however long it takes. I know. Then why? Because someone has to. Carter pressed the elevator call button. Because if I don't, Earth stays locked out. And because maybe, just maybe, Dr. Torin needs to learn that impossible just means we haven't figured it out yet. The elevator arrived. They stepped inside. As the doors closed, Carter caught his reflection in the polished metal. A human 22 years old, 79 kilograms, built by a gravity well that crushed dreams. Built, he reminded himself. Not broken. 48 hours. He could do this. He had to. Carter stood outside test chamber 7, staring at the door that would seal behind him. The chamber was a cylinder, 20 meters long, 3 meters wide. Built for stress testing equipment in variable gravity conditions, not for torturing humans who should have known better than to accept impossible challenges. Through the observation window, he could see it. Empty. Clinical. Waiting. Kale appeared at his shoulder, moving with that careful precision Velcrans used when they were worried about something. You don't have to do this. Carter didn't look away from the window. Yeah, I do. Vrask will use this against you. If you fail when you fail, he'll have proof. Documented evidence that humans can't handle Alliance standard work conditions. Then I won't fail. Carter, Kale's voice dropped. 40 engineers, 6 months. The cooling system is a cascade failure. Every fix creates 2 new problems. It's not about skill. It's about fundamental design flaws in 50-year-old equipment. 50-year-old equipment still breaks the same way new equipment breaks. Physics doesn't change. Carter turned Matt Kale's eye stalks. I've worked oil rigs, deep-sea platforms, systems held together with duct tape and prayers. This is just another puzzle. In 1.2 gravity. Yeah, well, I've got practice. The chamber door opened. A technician, breathy professional, completely uninterested in drama, gestured Carter inside. Simulation starts in 5 minutes. Emergency stop button is red panel north wall. Medical team on standby. Try not to die. Paperwork's a nightmare. Carter stepped through. The door sealed with a sound like a coffin closing. The gravity hit like a fist. Carter's knees buckled. Not collapse, just the sudden adjustment from 0.35 G to 1.2. His body knew this weight, had carried it for 22 years. But 5 weeks in low G had softened him, made him forget. He straightened, felt his spine compress, felt every vertebra pressed together under the load. This was more than Earth. This was punishment gravity. This was what Dr. Torin thought would break him. The reactor cooling system sprawled across the chamber floor, a maze of pipes, valves, heat exchangers, and connection points that belonged in a museum. Someone had helpfully tagged each component with status indicators. 70% of them glowed red. Failed, failing, critical. Carter knelt. The motion took effort. His thighs burned. He ignored it. Started with diagnostics. Through the observation window, faces pressed against the glass. 100 aliens watching the human try to do the impossible. Kale was there. Zira. Others Carter didn't recognize. And cameras. So many cameras. This wasn't just a test. This was a broadcast. Carter picked up a multimeter. The tool felt heavy in hands used to 0.35 G equipment. He tested the first valve assembly. Voltage good. Temperature within parameters. Pressure seal intact. But the coolant wasn't flowing. He moved to the next valve. The next. Building a mental map of the system, tracing pathways, finding the blockages. His shirt was already soaked with sweat. The chamber clock read 6:14. 47 hours, 46 minutes remaining. Carter's hands shook as he torqued down the 7th bolt. 2.5 hours in, he'd isolated 3 separate failure points. Fixed 2. The third was being stubborn. The heat exchanger had a fractured internal baffle, not visible from outside, only detectable through pressure, differential readings that didn't match the schematics. 40 engineers had missed it because the schematics were wrong. 50 years of modifications, updates, patches, none of them documented properly. Carter worked by feel, by intuition, built from 10,000 hours of maintenance work on systems that never quite matched their documentation. He pulled the exchanger apart. The baffle was cracked, all right. Hairline fracture, enough to disrupt flow without causing catastrophic failure. Fixable. Maybe. His father's voice echoed in his head. Patience, boy. System will tell you what's wrong if you listen. Carter listened. The crack needed sealant. The sealant needed pressure to set. Pressure meant reassembly. Reassembly meant working in a space barely wide enough for his shoulders with tools designed for species with more delicate manipulators. He squeezed into the access port. The world contracted to metal and darkness, and the sound of his own breathing amplified in the confined space. 1.2 gravity pressed him against the deck. Every movement was effort. Every breath was work. He got the sealant in place. Started the reassembly. His back screamed, muscles cramping. Vision blurring at the edges. Don't stop. Can't stop. Earth is watching. Bolt 1, bolt 2, bolt 3. His hand slipped. The wrench fell, clattered against the deck 3 feet below, too far to reach without backing out completely. Carter closed his eyes, counted to 10, backed out of the access port 1 excruciating inch at a time, retrieved the wrench, started over. The observation deck was packed. Kale stood at the front, eye stalks pressed against the glass. Beside them, Zera's patterns flickered through worried cycles, blue to purple, to gray, and back again. Behind them, students crowded, faculty members, off-duty technicians. Word had spread. The human was attempting the impossible. Live. Broadcast across the station. On the main display, Carter worked inside the cooling system's guts, covered in grease, shirt torn, moving with the careful precision of someone operating at the edge of exhaustion. 6 hours, someone said. Quillix, Pax maybe. Most species would be unconscious by now. He's not most species, Kale said quietly. Dr. Torrance stood in the back, eye stalks rotating independently, tracking Carter, tracking the system readouts, tracking the crowd. The professor's mandibles worked constantly, thinking, calculating. On screen, Carter extracted himself from the heat exchanger, stood, swayed, caught himself on a support beam. The crowd held its breath. Carter wiped his face with a sleeve that was already filthy, looked at his diagnostic pad. A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. Coolant flow restored, 20% improvement. Small victory, but victory. He moved to the next problem. Carter's world had contracted to simple truths. Breathe, move, fix, repeat. The cooling system was a living thing. 50 years of repairs meant 50 years of personalities. 50 different engineers, each with their own style, their own shortcuts, their own idea of what good enough looked like. He could read them in the work. The careful welder who'd reinforced stress points. The lazy tech who'd used undersized fasteners. The genius who'd rerouted flow through an auxiliary channel nobody else had noticed. Carter was having a conversation with ghosts. His body was failing. He knew the signs: dehydration, electrolyte imbalance, muscle fatigue accumulating faster than he could recover. But the system was responding. Flow rates climbing, temperature differentials normalizing. Red indicators shifting to yellow to green. Progress. He allowed himself 30 seconds of rest. Sat with his back against the reactor housing, feeling the heat radiate through the metal. Through the observation window, Kale caught his eye. Raised 2 manipulator limbs, thumbs up in human gesture. Carter nodded, rose, continued. The display in the observation deck updated. System integrity 47%. Time elapsed 13 hours 20 minutes. Time remaining 34 hours 40 minutes. Zera's patterns flashed cautiously optimistic gold. He might actually do this. Dr. Torrance moved closer to the glass. The rate of improvement is inconsistent with predicted performance curves. Either the system failures were less severe than documented, or he's better than you thought, Kale finished. The professor's stalks swiveled. Impossible is a word I use carefully, but yes, this is unexpected. On screen, Carter was elbow deep in a junction box, rewiring connections with hands that should have been trembling, but somehow remained steady. In the back of the observation deck, Commander Vrask watched. Silent, massive, calculating. He pulled out a personal data pad, tapped a command. In the test chamber, the gravity field fluctuated. Just a fraction. Just enough. 1.2 became 1.5. Carter's knees hit the deck. The weight came out of nowhere. 1 second, Carter was working. The next, he was crushed against the deck, junction box components scattering around him. 1.5 gravities. More than Earth. More than his body was built for. His heart hammered, fighting to push blood upward against pull designed to break him. His lungs strained. Each breath was lifting weight. The display on the north wall showed the new gravity setting. The emergency stop button glowed red 3 meters away. 3 meters. Might as well have been 3 kilometers. Carter tried to stand. His legs wouldn't cooperate. Muscles that had carried him through 13 hours of work simply gave up. He made it to his knees, vision graying at the edges, tasting copper. Through the observation window, chaos. Zero's patterns exploded red. KL's stalks went rigid. Others were pointing, shouting. The audio was off, but Carter could see their mandibles moving their tentacles, waving their concern written in body language that transcended species. Dr. Torin was at a control panel, manipulator limbs flying across interfaces. On the main display, the gravity setting remained unchanged. Locked. Carter understood then. This wasn't malfunction. This was Vrask. Zira's hands moved across the control panel like she was born to it. Override code, Dr. Torin snapped. Environmental controls are locked under commander authorization. I know. Zira's patterns had gone pure white. Determination. I'm bypassing authorization. That's a court-martial offense. I don't care. Kale watched Carter through the glass. The human had made it to his feet. Barely, swaying like a tower in wind, but standing. Still standing. He's going to die, someone said. No. Kale's voice was certain. Look at him. Carter took a step, then another, moving like he was walking through concrete, each motion deliberate, costly. He reached the junction box, knelt again, controlled fall more than intentional movement, picked up the scattered components, went back to work. The observation deck went silent. Zira found the override. Her patterns flashed triumph. Got it. I can lower the gravity. Bring it back to 1.2. Do it, Dr. Torin said. Her manipulator hovered over the command input. Stopped. If I do this, she said quietly, Vrask will know. He'll arrest me. Maybe worse. Then don't do it, Kale said. Zira looked at them. What? Look at him. Kale gestured to the window. He's not quitting. If you lower it now, Vrask wins. He gets to say the human needed help, needed rescue, proved his point about genetic weakness. So we just watch him suffer. We watch him prove everyone wrong. Through the glass, Carter finished reconnecting the junction box. Tested it. The diagnostic pad showed green. He moved to the next repair. Zira's hands shook. I can't just... The chamber door opened. Security flooded in. 3 Brenthies in full tactical gear, moving with the practiced efficiency of professionals who'd done this before. They surrounded Zira. By order of Commander Vrask, the lead officer said, You are under arrest for attempted sabotage of official station operations. I was trying to save his life. You were attempting to compromise the integrity of an authorized test protocol. Come with us. Now. Zira looked at Kyle, at Dr. Torin, at Carter still working, still fighting, completely unaware. I'm sorry, she whispered. They took her away. Carter didn't know when he'd started crying. The tears mixed with sweat and grease, and whatever else was leaking from a body operating 3 hours past its breaking point. 1.5 gravities. His bones ached, not muscle ache. Bone-deep structural pain that said his skeleton was compressing under load it wasn't designed to handle. His hands were bleeding, small cuts from sharp edges made worse by constant friction, unable to heal because he couldn't stop moving. The cooling system was at 62% integrity. 8 more critical repairs to go. 30 hours, 15 minutes remaining. Simple math said he'd make it. Simple biology said he wouldn't. Carter worked. He had to adjust his technique. 1.5 G meant he couldn't reach as high, couldn't bend as far, couldn't hold positions that required core strength his abdominals no longer possessed. So he adapted, used gravity as a tool, let heavy components fall into place rather than lifting them, positioned himself below repair sites so weight worked for him instead of against him. Improvisation, the thing humans did best. His father had taught him that. Oil rig North Sea storm coming in, equipment failing. No time for proper repairs. Make it work, boy. Make it work with what you've got. Carter made it work. The rig shook, waves 30 feet high slamming against supports designed for 20. Carter was 10 years old, too young to be in the maintenance section, definitely too young to be holding a wrench while his father fought a hydraulic line that was trying very hard to kill them both. Pressure's too high, his father's voice barely audible over the storm. Can't shut it down without the whole system failing. So what do we do? His father looked at him, salt spray in his beard, exhaustion in his eyes. We don't fight the pressure, son. We use it. Hand me that coupling. Carter handed it over, watched his father work. Instead of trying to clamp the spraying line, his father redirected it. Use the pressure to force sealant into the breach. Turn the problem into the solution. The leak stopped. See, his father's hand on Carter's shoulder. Heavy, warm, real. Gravity, pressure, weather, none of it cares about fair. It just is. So you don't waste energy fighting what you can't change. You find a way to make it work for you. That's cheating. That's surviving. The rig shook again. His father smiled. Now get below deck before your mother finds out I brought you up here. Carter stared at the stuck valve. 6 hours fighting it, trying to force it open, trying to bypass it, trying everything except the one thing that might actually work. He looked up at the ceiling, at the gravity generator hidden somewhere in the station's superstructure, pulling him down with 1.5 times Earth's force. Carter grabbed the heavy wrench, the one he'd been avoiding because it weighed 12 kilograms and his arms were barely functional. Climbed the maintenance ladder. Every rung was agony, every pull-up was will over physics. Reached the valve, positioned himself above it, held the wrench out over the frozen mechanism. Dropped it. 12 kilograms in 1.5 gravities. 18 kilograms of momentum. The wrench fell like a meteor, hit the valve's manual override with precision Carter couldn't have achieved if he'd swung it. The valve sheared, mechanism broken, but the stem rotated, coolant flowed. Carter hung on the ladder shaking, laughing, too tired to care that it was crazy. Through the observation window, the crowd erupted. Kale's stalks spun. Dr. Torrens' mandibles hung open. Even the guards who'd arrested Zero were pressed against the glass. The diagnostic pad updated. System integrity 78%. Carter climbed down, one rung at a time, muscles operating on nothing but stubbornness. Hit the deck, allowed himself 60 seconds. 59, 58. At 45, the alarm started. The station-wide emergency alarm was different from the test chamber alarm. Deeper, more insistent. The kind of sound designed to cut through sleep and conversation and make every living thing pay attention. Carter looked up from his work, through the observation window case. People running, lights flashing. The crowd that had been watching him scattered like debris in decompression. The chamber's communication system crackled to life. All personnel, emergency situation in Sector 9. Reactor breach, radiation leak, 0.12 atmospheres. Temperature negative 35 Celsius. Multiple casualties reported. Rescue teams deploying. This is not a drill. Carter's blood went cold. Sector 9. That was the residential ring. Student housing, faculty quarters, people. The display updated with live feed. He saw it through the static, a quarter-twisted metal emergency lighting, casting everything in hellish red. Saw bodies, 11 of them, trapped behind a bulkhead that had sealed automatically. Saw Nice, the young Yillith, barely conscious. Pinned under a support beam, the rescue teams were suiting up. But Sector 9 was on the opposite side of the station. 15 minutes minimum. Maybe 20. In 0.12 atmospheres, most species had 5 minutes. Maybe. The math was simple. The math was brutal. Carter looked at his diagnostic pad. System integrity, 78%. 3 more repairs and he'd hit 82. Enough to pass. Enough to save Earth's reputation. Looked at the chamber door. Locked. Still under test protocol. Looked at the red emergency button. The one that would stop everything. End the test. Prove Vrask right. The communication system crackled again. Commander Vrask's voice. Test participant Carter Thane, you are ordered to remain in test chamber. Rescue operations are underway. Do not interfere with station emergency protocols. Through the window, Dr. Torren appeared. The professor moved to a control panel, manipulator limbs flying. The chamber door unlocked. Torren's voice over the comm. The door is open. Whatever you choose, choose quickly. Carter stared at the cooling system, at the repairs he'd fought 13 hours to complete, at the proof that humans weren't genetic mistakes, at everything Earth needed him to finish. Then looked at the live feed, at Nice, at 11 aliens who had 30 seconds before their bodies started shutting down. His father's voice echoed one more time. You don't waste energy fighting what you can't change. But some things you could change. Some things you had to. Carter ran. The chamber door was 3 meters away. He covered it in 5 seconds, burst through into 0.35 G, and almost flew into the ceiling. The crowd that remained stared. Kale stepped forward. Carter, what are you, Sector 9? How fast can I get there? You can't, you'll die. 0.12 atmospheres, radiation levels, temperature. How fast? Maintenance tunnels. 8 minutes if you run. Kale's stalk swiveled, pointing. But you don't have a suit. You don't have equipment. You don't have— Carter was already running. Dr. Torrens' voice chased him down the corridor. You just failed the test. Earth's petition will be denied. Do you understand what you've done? Carter understood. He'd chosen people over politics, just like his father taught him. The maintenance tunnel access was locked. Carter didn't slow. Hit the door with his shoulder, 79 kilograms and 0.35 G, moving at full sprint. The lock shattered. He was through. Behind him, Kale's voice. I'm coming with you. No, you can't survive. Neither can you, but I know the tunnels, and someone needs to tell the story of how the human tried. They ran together. 8 minutes to Sector 9. 8 minutes to save 11 lives. 8 minutes to prove that humans didn't quit. Not when it mattered. Not ever. The maintenance tunnels weren't designed for running. They were designed for small-bodied Velcrons and Quillics who could navigate tight spaces, who could fold and compress and flow through corridors that were more concept than actual passageways. Carter ran anyway. 0.35 gravity meant every stride carried him farther than Earth physics would allow. He bounded through the tunnel like a rock skipping across water, using handholds to redirect momentum, trusting reflexes built by a childhood spent climbing oil rig scaffolding. Behind him, Kale struggled to keep pace. 6 legs were efficient in normal conditions. In a full sprint through tunnels that twisted and dropped and rose without warning, they were a liability. Left at the junction, Kale's voice echoed off metal walls, then down 3 levels. Carter hit the junction at full speed, grabbed a support beam, swung around the corner with momentum that would have torn a Velcron's limbs off. The tunnel dropped vertical. He didn't slow. Just dropped with it, catching himself on ladder rungs, controlling the fall more than climbing. 3 levels. 4 seconds. The air was changing, getting thinner, colder. They were close. The access hatch to Sector 9 was scorched black. Heat damage. Radiation exposure. The metal was still warm to touch. Through the hatch window, Carter could see the corridor beyond. Emergency lighting cast everything in red. The bulkhead had sealed, cutting the damaged section off from the rest of the station. Automated containment. Good for the station. Death sentence for anyone trapped inside. Carter tried the manual release. Locked. The radiation sensors had triggered automatic safety protocols. Stand back, he said. Kale's stalk swiveled. What are you? Carter kicked the hatch. Once, twice. The third impact bent the frame. The fourth shattered the lock. The hatch swung open. Air rushed out, thin, cold, carrying the metallic taste of radiation. Carter stepped through. The world changed. 0.35 gravity collapsed to 0.12. His body went weightless. Not floating, just suddenly unburdened. But the air. His lungs tried to expand, found nothing. 0.12 atmospheres was 12% of Earth's air pressure, like standing at the summit of Everest without supplemental oxygen. Carter's vision dimmed at the edges. His cardiovascular system, optimized for 1G, kicked into overdrive. Heart hammering, blood pressure spiking, trying to extract oxygen from air that wasn't there. He had minutes, maybe 5, maybe less. Down the corridor, past twisted metal and sparking cables, he could see them. 11 bodies, some moving weakly, some not moving at all. Nis was closest, the young Ylith pinned under a support beam. Her bioluminescent patterns flickered pale blue, fading. Carter ran. Running in 0.12 atmospheres felt like drowning. Every breath was work. Every step is fighting through water that wasn't there. His body screamed for oxygen it couldn't get. But he'd trained for this, not intentionally, just by being human, by being built for a world that demanded constant effort. At Everest's summit, climbers breathed 1/3 of the oxygen available at sea level. Elite mountaineers could function there, could think, could move, could survive. This was worse than Everest. But Carter had one advantage those climbers didn't. He only needed to survive for minutes, not hours. He reached Nis, dropped to his knees beside her. The support beam across her legs weighed maybe 90 kilograms. In 0.12 atmospheres, it felt like 11. Carter lifted it. The beam rose like it was made of foam. Set it aside. Nis's eyes fluttered open. Her patterns pulsed weak amber. Recognition. Can you move? His voice came out ragged. Each word cost oxygen he didn't have. She tried. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. Carter looked down the corridor. 10 more, all needing help, all running out of time, all depending on a mechanic who was operating on borrowed breath. He picked Nis up. In 0.35 g, she would have weighed 18 kilograms. Here she weighed 2, like carrying a child. Carter ran back toward the access hatch. Each step sent him flying. He controlled it, used walls and ceiling to redirect, became a pinball in a machine that was trying to kill him. Cale waited at the hatch, took Nis, pulled her through to safety. "Medical's on the way," Cale said. "Carter, you need to stop. You can't." Carter was already running back. The second rescue was a Brenthi, unconscious, maybe 300 kilograms in normal gravity. Here, 36, still heavy, still awkward. Carter's lungs were on fire. His vision had narrowed to a tunnel. His body was shutting down peripheral systems to preserve core function. Brain, heart, lungs, everything else was negotiable. He dragged the Brenthi to the hatch. Cale helped pull them through. 9 more, Carter gasped. "The rescue team is 2 minutes out. Wait for them." 2 minutes is too long. He went back. Third rescue, fourth, fifth. Carter's body was failing. His lips had turned blue. Cyanosis, oxygen saturation dropping into dangerous territory. His hands shook. Not fatigue, hypoxia, brain cells dying from oxygen starvation. But his legs still worked, his arms still lifted, his will still held. Sixth rescue. Seventh. The quarter was getting colder. His breath came out in clouds. -35°C. The station's environmental system was offline here, and space was very good at stealing heat. His fingers were going numb, frostbite setting in. Didn't matter. Eighth rescue. His heart was racing. Too fast, dangerous fast. 180 beats per minute. Cardiovascular system designed for 1G pushed beyond its limits. He could feel it starting to fail. Arrhythmia. Irregular beats. The warning sign before cardiac arrest. Ninth rescue. His vision was almost gone. Just shadows and red emergency light. His brain was shutting down. Hypoxic confusion setting in. He couldn't remember why he was here. Couldn't remember the names. Could only remember one more, one more, one more. 10th rescue. Carter's legs gave out. He was on the deck. Cold metal against his face. Body temperature dropping. Hypothermia and hypoxia fighting to see which would kill him first. One more. He could see them. End of the corridor. A Velcrin. Unconscious. Maybe dead. One more. Carter's arms wouldn't work. He tried to stand, fell. Tried again, fell again. Through the haze he heard voices. The rescue team. Finally here. Professional, efficient, moving past him toward the last victim. No, Carter dragged himself forward. Elbows, knees, across deck plating that was stealing what little heat he had left. Reached the Velcrin, couldn't lift them, could barely move. But he could push. Push them toward the rescue team, inch by inch, using his body weight, using the last reserves of strength that 1G had built into his bones. The rescue team reached the Velcrin, grabbed them, pulled them to safety, 11 for 11. Carter stopped moving, lay on the deck and felt his heart stutter, felt his vision go black, felt arms grab him, voices shouting, someone saying his name. "Dad, I did it. I didn't quit." Then nothing. Consciousness came back in pieces. Oxygen mask, warm blankets, the steady beep of a heart monitor. Pain everywhere. Carter's eyes opened. The medical bay ceiling was white, clean. Leon medical equipment clustered around his bed, scanning with lights he couldn't name. "He's awake," KL's voice. Close. A Velcrin doctor appeared in his vision. "Don't move. Your body experienced a severe trauma. Oxygen saturation dropped to 58%. Core temperature was 34.2 Celsius. You went into cardiac arrest twice. We had to restart your heart." Carter tried to speak. The oxygen mask muffled it. The doctor adjusted something. The mask loosened. "Did they?" His voice was destroyed, ragged. "The 11 all alive." Zira's voice. She moved into view patterns, flickering relieved gold. "Because of you." The test. Memory flooding back. "I failed. I left the chamber. Earth is going to be fine." A new voice. Dr. Torrin. The professor moved to the bedside. All 6 limbs working in patterns Carter had learned meant agitation. "While you were dying in Sector 9, I was reviewing security footage. Commander Vrask remotely increased the test chamber gravity to 1.5. Without authorization. Without safety protocols. He sabotaged your test." Carter's brain worked slowly. Hypoxia damage. "Why?" "Because I asked him to." Silence dropped like a hammer. Dr. Torrin's eye stalks contracted. "Shame." I was terrified that you would succeed, that everything I'd built my career on would be proven wrong by a 22-year-old mechanic from a world that shouldn't exist. So you tried to kill me? No, I tried to make you fail. I told Vrask to increase the difficulty, to push you past breaking. I wanted you to quit, to prove that 1G species had limits like everyone else. The professor's stalks rotated away. I never intended the reactor breach was real. An accident. When you left to save those people, I realized what I'd done, what I'd become. Where's Vrask? Arrested, Kale said, for sabotage, attempted murder, and about 40 other charges. The evidence was broadcast station-wide. Everyone saw. Zira, released, all his charges dropped. Zira's patterns shifted to amused pink. Turns out hacking to save someone's life isn't actually illegal when the person trying to stop you is the criminal. Carter closed his eyes, let the oxygen flow, let his battered body start to repair. The test, he said again. I was at 78%. I needed 82, Earth. Will be granted provisional membership. Dr. Torrens' voice was firm. I'm submitting my recommendation to the council tonight, along with my resignation from the xenobiology department. Don't. The professor's stalk snapped to attention. What? Don't resign. Carter looked at him. You were wrong. You admitted it. That takes guts. Teach others not to make the same mistake. After what I did, after what you did, you stood up. You unlocked the door. You let me choose. Carter's hand found the oxygen mask, pulled it aside. That matters. Second chances matter. Dr. Torrens stood silent for a long moment. Then all 6 limbs dipped in what Carter recognized as a bow. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Probably not, but you're getting it anyway. That's what humans do. We're stupid like that. A soft whistle came from the doorway. Pax hung there, body swaying nervously. I heard you were awake. The Quillix's translator carried apologetic tones. I wanted to say, I'm sorry about the recording. I thought I was helping, thought proving you could jump would change minds. Instead, I almost got you killed. Carter managed a weak smile. You did help, just not the way you expected. Come here. Pax descended cautiously. Carter extended his hand, careful, gentle, remembering his strength even now. We're good, Carter said. You did what you thought was right. That's all anyone can do. The Quillix's tension dissolved. Thank you. 5 days of recovery, 5 days of tests, 5 days of doctors telling him he was lucky to be alive. Now Carter walked into the emergency council session, still moving like every step cost him. The chamber was a sphere. 0G representatives from 23 species floated in assigned positions. Commander Vrask's position was empty, occupied instead by his second-in-command, a younger Brenthi, who looked deeply uncomfortable. Carter pulled himself to the center. Magnetic boots locked him in place. The council chair, an elderly Quillix named Vex, spoke first. Carter Thane, human. We have reviewed the events of the past 12 days. The test, the sabotage, the rescue. You are here to answer questions regarding Earth's petition for Alliance membership. I understand. Let me be direct. Vex's elongated body twisted to face Carter fully. You failed the test. By leaving the chamber, you forfeited. Under normal circumstances, this would result in automatic petition denial. Carter nodded. I know. However, these were not normal circumstances. You left to save 11 lives. Lives that would have been lost if you had remained. I didn't have a choice. You had every choice. You could have completed the test, secured Earth's membership, let the rescue teams handle the emergency. Vex paused. Why didn't you? The question hung in the air. Carter looked around the chamber, saw Kael floating near the Velcrin delegation, saw Zyra with the Yillith representatives, saw Nish recovered watching with patterns that flickered hope. Because that's not who we are, Carter said finally. Humans, I mean, we're not perfect. We've fought wars, we've hurt each other, we've made every mistake a species can make, and then invented new ones. This is not a compelling argument for membership. I'm not done, Carter's voice was steady, but we've learned that strength without compassion is just violence. We've learned that intelligence without empathy is just calculation. We've learned that surviving isn't enough. You have to be worth surviving. Philosophical statements don't answer my question. Then here's the answer. I left because 11 people needed help. And when someone needs help, you don't calculate the political cost. You don't run the numbers, you just go. That's what Earth taught me. That's what 1G taught all of us. Vex's body swayed. Explain. Every species here evolved in environments that were manageable. Point 0.2 gravity, point 0.4, point 0.8 at most. You learn to be efficient, to conserve energy, to think before you act. Carter gestured to himself. We evolved in a gravity well that crushed efficiency, that punished hesitation, that demanded we be strong enough to stand up after falling down, again and again and again. You're saying gravity made you better. I'm saying gravity made us stubborn, and sometimes the galaxy needs stubborn. Sometimes you need people who don't know when to quit. A representative from the Brenthy delegation spoke up. Your species has a documented history of violence, warfare, genocide. How do we know you won't bring that to the Alliance? Carter met their eyes. You don't. Same way we don't know you won't. Every species here has done terrible things. The Velkrans had the Purge Wars. The Yillith had the Crystal Cleansing. The Brenthys had, he paused. Actually, I don't know your history, but I'm betting it's not clean. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The question isn't whether we've made mistakes, Carter continued. The question is whether we learn from them, whether we're trying to be better. And yeah, we are. That's why I'm here. That's why Earth wants to join the Alliance. Not to conquer, not to dominate, just to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Vex was silent for a long moment. The Council will deliberate. You are dismissed. Carter started to leave. Stopped. One more thing. You asked why I left the test. The real reason, yes. Because I looked at those 11 people and I didn't see Velkrans or Yyliths or Brenthis. I just saw people who needed help. And if Earth joining the Alliance means we stop seeing differences and start seeing people. Carter shrugged. That's worth failing a test for. He left the chamber. The deliberation took 2.5 hours. Carter spent it in the observation deck watching stars wheel past as the station rotated. Kale found him there. You did well, the Velkran said. I told the truth. Doesn't always go well. It did today. Kale settled beside him, eye stalks tracking the same stars. I've been thinking about your testimony. About choice versus limitation. Yeah. You could have stayed in that chamber, finished the test, but you chose not to. That's character. Before Carter could respond, the station intercom activated. Carter Thane, please report to the council chamber. They looked at each other. Together, Kale asked. Together. The council chamber felt different the second time. Less formal, more human somehow. Representatives had broken formation, clustering in groups, discussing in voices that carried across the sphere. Vex gestured Carter to the center again. We have reached a decision. It was not unanimous. In fact, it was contentious. But a decision nonetheless. Carter's heart hammered. 1G cardiovascular system still recovering, still fighting. Earth's petition for Alliance membership is granted. Provisionally. The word provisionally hung there. For the next 5 cycles, Earth will be granted limited membership. 100 humans may work on Alliance stations. 1 representative may attend council sessions. Trade agreements will be negotiated on a case-by-case basis. What are the conditions? That every human who comes to the Alliance completes a cultural integration program. 6 months. Learning our customs, our laws, our expectations. Vex paused. And that you, Carter Thane, serve as the primary instructor. Carter blinked. Me? You are the first, the one who proved it was possible. Who better to teach it others? I'm a mechanic. You're a bridge. Vex's body swayed. Between your world and ours. Between what we thought was possible and what actually is. The council believes you can teach others to walk that bridge without breaking it. I don't know how to teach. Then learn. You seem good at that. Carter looked around the chamber, saw representatives nodding, saw NIST patterns bright with approval, saw Dr. Torin all 6 limbs raised in what might have been respect, saw Earth's future hanging on his answer. Yeah, he said, I can do that. One more thing. Vex pulled up a holographic display. The test chamber cooling system. You left it at 78% integrity. Incomplete. I know. We had a team finish the repairs, using your methodology, your notes, your improvisations. The display showed the final diagnostics. Final integrity 93%, highest it's been in 30 years. The team wants to know if you'd be willing to consult on other legacy systems. Carter felt something break open in his chest. Not pain, the opposite. I'd like that, but I want the jobs to go to qualified engineers. Velkrans, Yilliths, Brenthis, humans. Whoever's best. I'll teach them what I know. They can teach me what they know. We'll figure it out together. Acceptable. Vex's voice carried warmth the translator almost captured. Welcome to the Alliance, Carter Thane. Provisionally. The chamber erupted in sound. Clicks, whistles, chimes, and harmonics Carter couldn't name. Celebration in 23 languages. He floated their magnetic boots, the only thing keeping him grounded, and let himself believe it. Earth had made it. They were in. The observation deck was quiet at 0500. Carter stood at the viewport watching Earth rise over the station's curve. Blue and white and achingly familiar. A year ago, he'd left that world not knowing if he'd ever see it again. Now it was just a shuttle ride away. Behind him, the soft click of 6 legs on deck plating. Couldn't sleep either, Dr. Torrens' voice. Too much on my mind. Carter gestured to the planet below. First full Alliance delegation arrives tomorrow. 20 humans, 15 ambassadors, 5 engineers. The real work starts. You've been doing real work for months. The professor moved beside him. 30 students graduated from your integration program. Mixed species teams repairing systems across the station. Human-Velcrin partnerships achieving efficiency ratings we've never seen. That's them, not me. That's you teaching them it's possible. They stood silent for a moment watching Earth turn. I'm retiring, Torrens said. Effective end of cycle. Carter glanced over. You sure the students need you? They need teachers who can show them the future, not ones haunted by the past. The professor's stalks rotated to face him. But before I go, I wanted you to know, I'm writing a textbook, Xenobiology of High-Gravity Species. Chapter 1 addresses everything I got wrong about evolutionary limits. Sounds like a fun read. It should be required reading for every xenobiologist in the Alliance, which is why I want you to co-author it. Torren extended a manipulator limb. You provide the practical knowledge. I provide the theoretical framework. Together we teach the next generation not to repeat my mistakes. Carter looked at the offered limb. At this being who'd tried to sabotage him, who'd unlocked the door when it mattered, who'd spent a year proving that admitting you're wrong is just the start of being better. He shook, careful, gentle, precise. Yeah, he said, I can do that. One more thing. Torren pulled out a data pad. Tomorrow's delegation. One of the engineers is named Sarah Thane. Your sister, Carter's breath caught. She actually made it through the selection. Top marks in the qualifying exams. Specializes in high-pressure systems. The professor's stalks angled curiously. You didn't know. We haven't talked in 6 months. She was angry I left. Angry I took the risk. Carter's hand found the viewport pressing against the cold glass. But she followed anyway. Stubbornness runs in the family. Yeah, it does. Below them, Earth continued its slow turn. Somewhere down there, Sarah was probably packing, probably nervous, probably wondering if her brother had actually changed anything or just gotten lucky. Tomorrow, Carter would show her, would show all of them. The classroom held 60 students now, 30 humans, 30 aliens from 12 different species. The walls displayed schematics of the station's newest project, a joint human-Yelith engineering initiative to upgrade environmental systems across 3 sectors. Carter stood at the front, data pad in hand. Okay, he said. Welcome to Advanced Integration. I know the catalog says this is about diplomatic protocols and cultural exchange. He set the data pad down. But here's what we're actually doing. We're building the future. Humans working with Velcrins. Yeliths working with Brenthus. Brenthus working with Quillix. Learning each other's strengths. Covering each other's weaknesses. Solving problems nobody can solve alone. Kale entered from the back, full faculty member, now teaching xenobiology alongside engineering applications. Today's project, Kale announced, is the Sector 12 Gravity Stabilization System. It's been fluctuating for 3 months. Every team that's tried to fix it has failed. You have 8 hours, mixed species groups, no restrictions on methods. A human hand went up. Carter recognized her. Sarah, his sister, still getting used to 0.35 G, still adjusting to a world where everything weighed less, but meant more. Question. Sir, I mean Carter. She caught herself. What if we try something nobody's tried before? What if we break the rules a little? Carter smiled, saw his father in her eyes, saw stubbornness and creativity and the refusal to accept that problems were unsolvable. Then you break the rules, he said. That's what we do. We see systems that everyone says are impossible to fix, and we figure out how to make them work anyway. That's the human part, the Alliance part. He gestured to the mixed teams forming around the classroom. That's learning to do it together. The students scattered. Sarah ended up paired with a Velcrin engineer and a Yelith technician. Carter watched them cluster around a schematic, watched his sister's hands move as she explained. Something watched the aliens lean in to listen. Zira appeared at his shoulder. Chief Safety Director, youngest in station history, recently promoted to Alliance Engineering Council. How's it feel, she asked. Watching them. Terrifying. Wonderful. Like watching everything we did actually matter. It mattered. Her patterns flickered warm gold. Look. He looked, saw Sarah and her team laughing about something, saw a Brenthi student teaching a human how to properly torque a bolt in low G, saw Ness, fully recovered, brilliant engineer in her own right, demonstrating a Yelith technique for pressure differential analysis to a group of fascinated humans, saw walls coming down with every shared tool, every solved problem, every moment of understanding. You know what the council decided last week? Zira said quietly. What? Full Alliance membership for Earth. No more provisional status. Effective next cycle. Her pattern shifted to amused pink. Turns out when you spend a year proving you're not a threat, people start to believe it. Carter felt something settle in his chest. Not pride, gratitude. We did it, he said. You did it. The rest of us just watched and learned. No. Carter shook his head. Kale stood with me when nobody else would. You filed the grievance that started everything. Torrin unlocked the door. Ness survived and became proof that it was worth surviving. Even Pax recording that video put everything in motion. He looked around the classroom. We did it. Together. That's the only way it works. The classroom door opened. Dr. Torrin entered, moving with the careful deliberation of someone who'd decided to postpone retirement for one more year. Carter, a moment. They stepped into the corridor. The Alliance Science Council reviewed our textbook proposal, Torrin said. They've approved full publication. 5,000 copies for initial distribution. Required reading for every xenobiology program in Alliance space. That's incredible. There's more. They want us to teach a seminar series, 20 stations, 6-month tour, you and me explaining to the galaxy why everything they thought they knew about gravitational biology was wrong. The professor's stalks rotated. I understand if you can't. You have responsibilities here. Carter thought about it. Thought about Earth now open to the stars. Thought about 8 billion humans who deserved to know their place in the galaxy wasn't just allowed, it was welcomed. I'll do it, he said, on one condition. What? We don't just teach about humans. We teach about all of it. About how every species has something unique. How the Yeliths see patterns we miss. How Velcrin collaboration models could revolutionize human project management. How Brenthi strength analysis could improve our construction techniques. Carter's voice strengthened. We teach them that Earth didn't join the Alliance because we're special. We joined because we're ready to learn from everyone else. Torrin was silent for a long moment. That, the professor said finally, is exactly the lesson the galaxy needs to hear. They returned to the classroom. The students were deep in their project now, arguing good-naturedly about approaches, testing hypotheses, building something that didn't exist an hour ago. Carter watched his sister work, watched her learn from aliens who'd learned from him, watched the cycle continue, and understood finally what his father had been trying to teach him on that oil rig 12 years ago. It wasn't about being strong enough to stand. It was about being strong enough to stand back up, again and again and again, until the standing became walking, until the walking became running, until the running became flying. Earth had stood up. Now it was learning to fly. Through the viewport beyond the classroom, Earth hung in the black and white and perfect. 8 billion hearts beating under 1G gravity. 8 billion people who'd spent their entire evolutionary history being crushed by the planet beneath their feet. But crushing makes you strong. And the galaxy was finally learning what humans had always known. Impossible is just another word for not yet. And we've always been good at yet.